Hey, what's going on, world? It is yours truly, TJay Jones, and welcome to the State of the SWAC podcast, where we talk some of the hottest topics in all of SWAC football. On today's episode, we're going to be talking a little bit about some of the key matchups this Saturday, and we're going to be breaking down some of those key games. So thank you so much for tuning in, and hopefully you go ahead and hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, so we can get this thing going. The first game that I want to highlight, I think that some people want to look at the Florida A&M Jackson State game, and that game is pretty meaningful, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But there are a few SWAC matchups that I think people need to start paying attention to, because to me, these are some teams that can come out the SWAC East or the SWAC West, pending them getting everything together. We've seen some of the momentum that was built by these teams, and hopefully they can build on that going into 2023 to have an effective season. The first game that I want to look at would be the Texas Southern versus Prairie View A&M game. This game should be exciting because I like both teams, man. Both teams present a little bit of a clash. You look at Prairie View. Prairie View is a team that, likes to throw the ball a little bit. You also have Trayzon Conley. He can move around in the pocket. But they have a really good balance, man. They got a good balance. They got a really good running back in Jaden Stewart. Had 688 yards last season. He had a couple of touchdowns, 7. And also, man, you got to think about Trayzon Conley as well as a rusher. I mean, he had 661 yards and 13 touchdowns. And he can hurt you with his arm as well, man. He had 11 passing touchdowns. So what you have here is a dual threat quarterback that's able to get the ball into the hands of the playmakers. And also you have yourself a really good, solid running game. The offensive line of Prairie View, I expect for them to be just as good as they were last year. You also have linebacker Keyshawn Johnson coming back, man. He had 66 tackles on last year for Prairie View, and I think that he's going to replicate that. He also led the team in sacks with 5. So you're going to have to get this guy going, especially when you look at Texas Southern, who likes to run the football. I mean, they got a big battering ram guy that I love watching, man, a guy named Ja'Cory Howard. I mean, he's about 6'1", 6'2", about 225 pounds. I mean, the guy looks like a freak of nature. He drags defensive players right behind him, especially when he's fighting for extra yards. I think that if you have him out there, wearing down the defense, and then you have Andrew Body that's able to get the ball into the hands of his receivers, guys like Derek Morton, I think that this could be a really good year for Texas Southern. Texas Southern has been one of those teams that have been chomping at the bit. A few years back, they won a SWAC championship mainly because of their defense. But I think they have a really good balance, man. They got some guys coming back. They got some leadership on the defensive side of football with Tyreek Cooper and Isaiah Hamilton, who had 5 interceptions last year. So this is going to be a really good game because both of these teams are going to have to bring their defenses. Both teams have quarterbacks that can move around in the pocket, and you got to be able to be disciplined, man. Eye discipline is going to be key in games like this, Texas Southern versus Prairie View. And then another game I want to highlight would be Southern University versus Alabama State. This is two teams that feel like they are in the thick of things. If some things went their way, a couple wins, then they probably would be in the Heritage Bowl on last year. But it just didn't happen. They had a couple little bumps in the road. But I think that both of these teams are going to be really good this season. Most importantly, let's start with Southern. I mean, Southern, they got a lot of their core guys coming back. You still got Breshawn McCray, a leader in the quarterback room, a guy that threw for 1,600 yards. He also rushed for 657 yards last season. He also have wide receiver Cassius Allen, who I expect for him to step up a little bit. He only had 400 yards last season, but I think that this is going to be the year where he steps into that leadership role to be that leader at the wide receiver room. You got Julian Campbell, has 79 tackles, and you also have Harris, who played in the secondary, had 4 interceptions. Look, Southern has always been good. I think we already know that. They've always been in the thick of things. They've had a few bumps in the road that has cost them, to get to extra step, especially when you're talking about these bowl games. But as long as they can continue to play good defensively, they'll be just fine. I mean, you look at the defensive side of the football, I mean, they are getting production from these defensive tackles and linebackers. I mentioned Julian Campbell, he had 4 sacks. You think about Taj Brown, he had 3.5. You got Givens out there, he had 5.5. So what Southern loves to do, they love to get after the quarterback. So this is going to be a very, very tough game for Alabama State. Alabama State is one of those teams that, they do a lot of things well. It's not one particular thing that you can focus on when you play against a team like Alabama State. Alabama State is one of those teams that they can hurt you in the running game. They can hurt you in the passing game. And, they can play really good defense. And Colton Adams, man, the linebacker out of Alabama State, had 92 tackles last season. To say this guy was all over the field would be an understatement. But, I mean, I look at Alabama State, yeah, they're a sound tackling team. They're a really good disciplined defensive team. But one thing that I've noticed is you don't really have that much pressure on the quarterback. You don't have a lot of guys out here that can get the sack. I mean, looking at some of these stats, who is going to be the guy to step up? Who is going to be that guy to give you that production defensively? I have no idea. I mean, you cannot just get it done with a bunch of guys that's getting 1 and 2 sacks. Somebody has to step up. I don't know if it's going to be Colton Adams. I don't know if it's going to be a Shad Davis. But somebody has to step up to take this defense on their back and be the face of the defense. Now, I'm not saying that you can't win like this. I mean, a good defensive team, with a collection of really sound guys, you still can get the job done. But I think they need somebody to be able to step up to be that guy. So that's something I'm going to be on the lookout for in this Alabama State season. Next, and finally, let's talk a little bit about Jackson State versus Florida A&M. This is a game for the last couple of years. Whoever wins this game, that's the team that comes out of the East. We know that Jackson State, for the last 2 years since the Orange Blossom Classic has been created, Jackson State has won these games. Jackson State has done what they need to do. Now, we all know that there's no more Deion Sanders. Prime has moved on to Colorado, but T.C. Taylor has stepped in, and they did a really good job last week versus South Carolina State. Now, some people look at that game and say, hey, TC, he's here, he's arrived. And, I'm kind of on the fence when it comes to that. Yes, I do think that he's arrived, but when you look at South Carolina State, they have been dealing with some issues. They have been dealing with problems. They've been on a little bit of a downward spiral. So this game, to me, is going to really show me, as an onlooker, what type of team Jackson State can be with T.C. Taylor as their head coach, because Florida A&M is a really good football team. Talent all over the board. They're led by Jeremy Musa. He had 2,700 yards last season. You got Jalen McLeod, the running back. But then you have Xavier Smith. 1,021 yards. Isaiah Major had 64 tackles. And Javen Morgan, who had 4 interceptions in the secondary. Look, this is a balanced football team. They like to throw the ball all over the place. They're very, very talented at the wide receiver position. And it's best for Florida A&M to start off strong. If you can combine all this together and you stay the pat, you can be very, very dominant, and you can find yourself in a Heritage Bowl. But I am looking at, Florida A&M. I am looking around and seeing who is going to be that guy to be able to step up. I'm looking at a guy like Kamari Stevens. Last year, he had 8.5 sacks. That's exactly what you want to see versus, somebody that was wreaking havoc in your defense, and Isaiah Land, who is no longer there. He's moved on to the NFL. So you need somebody like Kamari Stevens to step up to be able to get pressure on Jason Brown, the quarterback of Jackson State, who had 356 yards last week. He was 26 of 30. An 86% completion percentage this dude had. And, the offensive line was holding up for him. And if you give a guy like Jason Brown time, he will pick you apart. So Florida A&M is going to have to get pressure on him. Jason Brown is not going to hurt you with his legs. He is a pocket passer. He is relying on the offensive line to keep him up straight. But he also has some guys that can run the football, guys like Irv Mulligan, who had 109 yards last week. He took advantage of the opportunities that presented himself, and he had a lot of pressure on him. You know, they had some really good running backs that were with Jackson State over the last couple of years. They're no longer with the team. Savion Wilkinson, who had a really good season, went over 1,000 yards last year. He went to Colorado. So Irv Mulligan has an opportunity to put his legacy together and make an immediate impact like he did last week. So this is going to be a really good game. I think that both teams are going to be able to step up. I think that both teams understand that for the last couple of years, this game has decided who's coming out of the East, and I don't think that this will be an exception this season. It's going to be a tough game for both sides, but it's going to be fun to watch. But I would love to hear from you. What do you think about the SWAC key matchups for the week? You got Texas Southern versus Prairie View, Southern versus Alabama State, and Florida A&M versus Jackson State. Comment down below, like and share this video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. And previous episodes are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Anchor FM. Till next time, all I got to say is, it's rough in the SWAC.